And then if we take that into leadership, so we're talking the benefits individually at the moment of somebody having coaching. What about using coaching skills from a management or leadership perspective?
Yeah. Well, I think as we were talking about earlier, it's potentially back to it can be a leadership style that really helps to, generate more positive working environments, more creativity, more innovation, more engagement from the people within the teams that the leader looks after. By using coaching techniques, you're almost, encouraging people to take on more autonomy, to think things through for themselves, to use the kind of benefits that we've been talking about that coaching can bring and pass those on to the people that report into them. And that can be really powerful. Again, if the person who's the leader is able to support people in that way, and help them unlock the benefits that we've talked about, and then they in turn can cascade it on, it can have a huge kind of benefit to the kind of culture and the environment that they create for the people in their workplace.
Yeah, again, I agree. One of the things with that, I wholeheartedly agree. I don't see it happening as often as I would like.
Mm-hmm.
And it'd be interesting to get your take on it as well. Having worked for an organization where I know they had a really good culture and, where you kind of cut your teeth as well. What do you think organizations need to be doing to allow this type of style of leadership to take place? Or even on the flip side, slightly, what are we doing wrong?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I mean, and I'm half tempted to kind of, wind the clock back and think about, the sort of, the history, the research, the sort of evidence from the kind of 20th century forward even into the 21st century about where the kind of idea of management and leadership kind of came from, and it's still quite prevalent in a lot of organizations. And that's that kind of idea, I suppose, of kind of Taylorism, and the managers, the leaders set the work and then they tell the workers what to do. And I think in my experience that sort of has continues to pervade even into modern day organizations. There's this sense that once you're a manager, once you're a leader, you need to be making all the decisions, taking control, showing your authority, showing that you know what you're doing and forging the path forward, and all those kind of phrases. And I'm not saying that doesn't work. I think in some cases that can work really effectively, but a lot of the time we're potentially in danger of not bringing all the benefits, particularly in that kind of modern knowledge work world, that we could get if we adapted a different style. And maybe in the first instance, it's just about helping leaders who perhaps have just learnt by copying their leader from when they were kind of cutting their teeth, and that person probably learnt it from their previous person, and so on. Just about gaining new knowledge, being curious about different styles and like what something like coaching could bring, and just attempting to try it out,
Yeah,
learn about it, find out more, and then just put it into practice and see what happens.
interesting. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think there's a bit of there's a cultural thing, right? And I think I don't know whether this is a UK thing or a bit wider, but I've certainly been involved in a number of businesses where it's kind of top down. You do as I say. All decisions are made at the senior level. Often, when you're in the ranks a bit lower, you might question those decisions and go, "Why are we doing this?" And you've got no involvement in that, and it definitely can be a little bit disengaging. Um, and yeah, I think if we could move towards more of the coaching type kind of leadership style as more of a default, I think we'd get more engaged workforces and higher productivity. And it's a much wider topic than that.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure we could have another session on.
Yeah.
So moving it forward a little bit, and I know we've had sessions on this. So what would you say are the kind of the first steps towards more of a coaching leadership style? What should people be doing?
Yeah. So, I mean, I remember we talked about this on a previous Coaching Corner event. Maybe thinking about the sort of ask versus tell barometer, as I remember calling it.
Yeah.
So a lot, as we were just talking about, the sort of top down, maybe slightly more traditional leadership style would be that leader tells everybody else what to do. So they've got a good idea as to how we should progress with whatever it is, and they share that information with those that report to them or their colleagues in very much a telling style. So telling people what they need done, giving them the direction to kind of do it. So when I talk about the kind of ask versus tell barometer, it's almost to try and swing the dial a little bit more towards asking questions rather than telling the other person what to do or putting across your opinion. And that could just look like asking more kind of open questions. So rather than saying, I think we should progress with the project in this particular way, asking the person, what are your thoughts on the next steps? How would you approach this situation? Where should we aim to get to in the next month? Those kind of questions that almost prompt the other person to think a little bit more, and just starting to actually consider how much as a leader do I default to kind of telling people, not in a necessarily authoritarian way, but sharing my views as the way I lead, versus how much do I ask questions, and just tipping the balance and seeing what happens.
Yeah, interesting. Again, I agree. So, and for the kind of uninitiated, for people who feel that they're maybe telling a bit more than asking, how does that get a higher level of productivity and for them?
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, in a simple way, and I can't, the kind of cliche of, I'm going to get this wrong now, but it's almost like, what is it? Two heads are better than one kind of thing. So rather than just sharing your own thinking and thoughts, telling that person how you want something to happen, even in a kind of non-direct way, by asking the question, you're actively engaging them in thinking about it too.
Yeah.
So rather than, again, the leader as the thinker and then all of the workers as the doers, you're trying to just flip that a little bit and say, well, hang on, what if we all do the thinking? What if we try and harvest all the ideas and the questions and the kind of concerns that people might have? Let's try and get them out by asking good questions. And then we've got all this information that we can now deal with, and everybody's more kind of pulling together to kind of help solve it.
Yeah, and I love that analogy, by the way. It's really, it's quite an interesting thing, and I think I was definitely guilty for a good period of time, especially when I moved into a more senior role for the first time, of actually being that kind of fountain of knowledge, or perceived fountain of knowledge. Let's be honest, I wasn't smarter than anybody else in the room. I was just the person that people came to ask. And I think there was a weird thing, actually, when I reflect on it, it was that I actually quite enjoyed it to a point, because you feel some self-value from it. Your ego likes it. You get a nice little ego massage by someone's coming to you with a problem. You give them an answer. You feel like you've solved it. You're like a little bit of a dopamine buzz. You're like, right, okay. But what actually happens with it, and kind of to your point, is that you build a team of people who are reliant on you to get answers to questions that really they can sort out for themselves. And it held me back from progressing any further, because I was getting too busy. And actually, it was building less resourcefulness in the people that they weren't really engaging and using their brains. And so it's quite an interesting thing. But as you've been talking about it. It's also made me think that the transition is quite an interesting one from a personal perspective of actually just letting go a little bit. And so you have to let go of your ego in it a little bit. You have to be a little bit more humble. You have to accept that there are definitely smarter people than you. And by doing that, you actually progress a lot more.
Yeah.
And the collective is a lot greater.
Yeah.
But there is a bit in there that you have to trust in it. If that does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, yeah. You're reminding me of all sorts of kind of, yeah, events, feelings, and of going through that transition myself. That sort of, you're absolutely right. It's great to be needed and to feel like people are coming to you at work, but the idea of it actually, you're a bottleneck in doing that, yeah, is a bit of a kind of for me, it was a bit of a light bulb moment, or actually, I think it was an old boss that kind of, pointed that out. You're blocking everything by trying to do it all yourself, and actually then switching it to empowering others to kind of come on that journey, to be able to take on that responsibility, to be able to step back, as you say, from the kind of the ego and the sort of sense of I'm really important around here, to actually be more in the background and actually kind of going, you know what, these people are way better at this than me. That does take some transition, and ultimately does require some kind of movement on behalf of how you think about things.
Yeah, and it's an interesting concept, one that I've been mulling over a little bit recently. Actually, I think one of the bits of leadership advice that people often get is to delegate more. And it's it is great advice, but it's very narrow, as a lot of these things are. It's like, delegate more. Okay. Right, I'm going to delegate everything. But fundamentally, to delegate more, you need to trust in the people around you that you're delegating your work to. And again, it kind of comes back to this concept of letting things go, and actually letting your ego go, letting it go and saying, but other people are perfectly competent at doing this, whatever I'm doing. We'll pass that on to that person, and then I'll concentrate on different things that will help move the business forward. But it's a little bit more complex than people think it is sometimes as well. So yeah, very, very, very interesting.